whichever. Okay, good. We've got the recording going. That's excellent. Just make sure you click that off when you're finished. Excellent. Okay. Karen, do you have a headset? Okay, the talk button is just below the screen where you see my 6 little weird pictures up there. Right under that, there's the little microphone icon, and you can see it kind of bouncing around as I'm speaking. Right under that's the talk button. And you click that on, and then you'll be able to talk continuously until you click it off again. Just under the image up at the top where it has the audio and video, and it has 6 pictures of me. It's like a weird little, I'm making a bunch of funny faces up there. And then right under that there's a talk button and a video button. Okay, Karen, we're not hearing you, so it is, did you go through the setup wizard by clicking, like the screen says here, or it shows that little microphone with the red sprockety thing on it up at the top? Yeah, you have to go through the setup wizard. Do you see the microphone with the sprocket up at the very top of the screen? It's under the help menu there at the top of the window. It looks like what's on this screen here that says, you know, welcome to the session. Click the audio setup wizard, that sort of thing. It takes a couple of minutes to go through the audio setup wizard. It just selects your speakers and your microphone and gives you an opportunity to test them, make sure they're all working. You do have to do that in order to use the talk function or in order to hear the audio. Once you've gone through the audio setup wizard, then you should be able to click the talk button, and we should be able to hear you. If you have a mute function on your headset microphone, make sure that that's not turned off. I know I have done that a couple of times myself. Okay, do you, you're not seeing this talk button? It's like it's up here.
Okay,
the arrow is pointing sort of towards that black window.
Okay,
there you go.
I got
We can hear you. Excellent. Okay. The slide advancer, do you see where that is?
Is that where it's up in the upper right corner, says slide 1 next to it and go to next page?
Exactly.
Got it.
You can just, there you go. You got it. Okay. I'm going to be jumping in and out because I'm doing another training session down the hall here at the office. But I'll keep checking back. So.
Thank you.
Have a great session.
Looks like I have one person here, Anita or Annette. I'm not sure. Is that 2 people? Okay, thanks. Let me give it about another minute before I start, since it took me a while to get it together to find all of the connection parts, since I'm not real familiar with this format. Well, Anita and Annette, where are you from? Are you from Denver? Oh, cool. Hi, Andrea. I'm glad to see you back for just a minute. I thought I'd wait another minute before I started. Oh, Park University. I've heard of that. So I'm going to wait one more minute, and then I will get started and tell you a few things that you might not know about how students can cheat. Thanks, Annette. Well, I'm showing 12:02, so let's go ahead and get started. This is a picture of me. Since I teach from home, I usually don't have my hair fixed, nor do I have on always nice clothes. So that's what I love about teaching online, is I don't have to look good all the time. So let's move on. I want to talk about plagiarism and cheating and some techniques that you might not have thought of. My interest in this topic and my decision to write this presentation has to do with an article that was this summer in the Denver Post. And it talked about the cheating epidemic and how students cheat, and probably some of the interesting figures I saw was that 60.8% of students admitted to cheating. And that concerned me. I mean, I knew it was a lot of students, and I've run across it over the years when I've been teaching, but it always kind of bothered me. And this kind of brought it home, and I said, you know, I need to share some of the information about how I have been able to track down some stuff on cheating. So I'm going to go through these topics. Copy and paste is the simple one that pretty much everyone is familiar with. Some of the others are not as familiar to you. Hidden characters, visual spoofing, incomplete or missing citations, misattribution and ghost attribution, often very similar and often used together, and then a foreign source. So copy and paste, usually your stuff like Turnitin is going to find that. So that's not a real problem anymore because almost everybody is using some form of anti-plagiarism software. So are you using Turnitin at Park University? I'll let one of you enter that in the little box, or you could talk if you wanted. Oh, so the school does not provide it. You have to check manually. Ooh, yuck. There are some free plagiarism detection services, so I would recommend that you might want to look through some of them because they will probably catch the copy and paste plagiarism. So you can almost always catch that with a lot of the, even the free plagiarism detection. So you might do a search for free plagiarism detection, and there's several different ones out there. I didn't include a list of them, but there are some that I have tried. So it's going to usually be found. And a lot of times I would get something that would not be caught by the Turnitin software. And this always kind of bothered me because I thought that it should have been caught. And so I'm going, what on earth is happening? Why am I not catching this? Why is my software not catching it? And so I'm a little bit of a techie nerd, and so I started doing some detective work and started trying to figure out how they were cheating. And so here are some of the things that I found. Hidden characters. What they do is they enter an extraneous character and then hide it. In Microsoft Word, when you go to some of the options available in Word, and let me think of what one of the options available what is. It's under the font area. You can just copy the character or highlight the character and then go to font and then make it hidden. That's one of the options. And so it looks like there's nothing there, there's nothing wrong with it. But especially if you're using free plagiarism checking or using manual checking and just doing a copy and paste, this is not going to show up. This hidden character is almost always caught by Turnitin, but not by some of the other stuff. So you might have a hidden character. The other thing is to add space, and I show you that it's pretty obvious if you have a big space, but when I used a size 2-point font, I don't think you can tell that there's a space between many schools have academic integrity requirements. So when you do that, adding the space, you just highlight the space and then make it a very small font size so that it doesn't show up. What you can do is in Microsoft Word there is the show and hide character symbol. It's up in the toolbar in the paragraph section, and spaces will show up as little dots between words. So if there's a space, that may show up. However, if they've really reduced the size of it, it may not be visible. So what you can do is highlight and then make the font very large, and then the spaces might show up. To find the hidden characters, if you go to the font selection, you can find out, you can highlight some of the things and find out if the hidden is selected. And for that, I would probably highlight all of the text and then click and unclick on hidden so that it would then show up if there was something hidden. So the hidden character is the kind of thing. And the space isn't actually hidden. You just can't see it because it's too small. Have you seen that on any papers, or have you suspected something like that on a paper? Oh, thanks. And surprisingly, it's not that hard to find, so hopefully you will be able to find that. Plagiarism detection software uses all the characters, and the addition of characters doesn't match. And so if you look for words that have the red squiggly line, they might give you the indicator that there's a spelling error. Sometimes if you have spaces, it doesn't find it as an error. So there's some real strange things that might happen, but you have to be careful because your plagiarism detection may or may not find that hidden character. Visual spoofing. This is probably the one that, as you're looking at it, is not going to be obvious. And what happens with visual spoofing is the use of Unicode. And I have a link here that tells you about Unicode. And essentially every character, not just every letter or number, but every character will have a unique code number. And what happens is somebody will look for a symbol that looks like a character. And then plagiarism checking software, again, looks for exact matches of characters. If the character doesn't match, it's not a match. Turnitin indicates that it does check for this. However, I suspect that most of the others, and especially if you were using a free one, would not be checking for that. So what does it look like? Well, a common character is E, and if you play Scrabble, you're familiar with E being the most commonly used letter in the alphabet, in the English alphabet anyway. Well, Cyrillic E looks the same, but it's a different character. And so you go to a website and copy the Cyrillic character for the E, and you replace it. Notice when I did that, the first paragraph is using the real letter E. In the second paragraph, I've used the Cyrillic or Russian letter E. And notice that you see the squiggly lines under words. So these are words that probably should be considered to be spelled correctly. And when you see that, that is often a key to you that they might have done this visual spoofing. They're using a character that looks like one of the letters. And I think E is probably the most common one that would be used because, first of all, it's going to take care of a lot of words for matching, and because the Cyrillic E is a perfectly good match. Have you ever seen a paper that had words that you thought were spelled correctly showing up with the red squiggly indicating they had a spelling error? Okay, so look for that, and that is one that I really had to search hard to find this, because I had a paper that I knew had been copied and I could not find it. It was very, very difficult for me. And then when I found this Cyrillic alphabet, that was how I found this one. Notice that the letter A looks about the same and the letter E look about the same. The A is a little more scripty, and so it might show up, and so it might be a little easier to find, but the E looks like the perfect letter E in the Times New Roman. The next kind of thing that students might do, and this is more of a cheating trick, is to use an incomplete or a missing citation. And so the student paper ends up with a high similarity, but the majority of the matches come from properly quoted or paraphrased material, and they list them. So their in-text citation looks like a perfectly good APA citation. So I show the example, Cocken and Lote, 2009. Then in the reference, either the student omits that totally, and if they don't have it in there at all, depending on how carefully the professor is looking at the paper, you may or may not find that. You might just skip that one. Oh, you get that a lot, yeah. The other thing is they forget to complete the citation, and let me tell you why this seems to work is that you confront the student and they say, oh, I forgot that citation, I forgot to finish it. You deduct points for the incomplete citations, for use of that particular citation too much. Your focus ends up being on helping the student paraphrase, make sure that they include their citations, and then you move on to the next paper. You know, you aren't focusing on the fact that they might have done that intentionally to kind of keep you away from looking at how much they have used this incomplete or inappropriate citation. And the next one is along these same kinds of lines. It's a way that they might be cheating. And this is the misattribution. Okay? To attribute incorrectly. That's the definition. So what happens is the student has information and they attribute it to a source that does not exist. And they use the correct APA for an article. And the information is not from that source. And it may not be from any source, but may be invented to support the paper. So if they're trying to show something and maybe they knew that there were some specific authors or articles that might be appropriate, they include the citation for that correct article. But what they do is write down something and attribute it to that article when it actually didn't come from that article. So, for example, the student might say, one of the important characteristics of effective educational leaders is his or her ability to explain curricular standards, and then they cite correctly. It's a real set of authors, and it's a real article but the article doesn't include that information. So let me ask you, how many times do you check the article to see if the information in the in-text citation is actually in the article? Oh, good. I'm glad you do get that. Yeah, it happens. So, you know, one of the problems is if there's a lot of citations and a lot of student papers, it's easy for a student to include something like this, and if you're not familiar with it, you're going to miss it. It's easy. I know that I don't have time to check all the sources, and if the information may seem plausible, it may appear that the student paraphrased properly since it doesn't get flagged by the plagiarism detection software, so it sort of seems to work unless it's really obvious sometimes that you can pick it out. But this one is a little harder to catch. So if you expect to find a reference to a specific author, they have that author, they have a legitimate article, it sometimes will just, yeah, the sloppy in-text citation would be a clue for this. But if it's done reasonably well, you may accept it as correct. So that's one thing you have to, somehow I wish there was an easy way to check that and make sure that the information actually came from that article. One thing I've seen done, and one thing I've done too in some of my classes when I haven't had a lot of references required, is to ask students to provide, oh, you had a learner who aced APA, but everything she submitted was copy, yeah. I have asked students to submit the copy of the article, so they have to provide an electronic copy of the article, and so then they think I'm going to check it and are perhaps a little more careful. And sometimes I do kind of scan if it looks a little flaky, but if it looks close to reasonable, yeah, asking them to submit, and then, you know, they say, oh, well, it's not in electronic form, and you say, oh, you can scan it and send it to me, that'll work, and that helps deter some of the concern. And then the other thing I like is when they say, oh, well, you know, it didn't come across very well when I downloaded it. Oh, well, talk to the librarian. I'm sure that the library has staff who can help you with that. So I throw it back to them. And I also will often indicate that they have to have current resources and references. And if it's current, it's probably going to be electronically available. So I try to, you know, play their game too sometimes. The ghost attribution, this is another one, very similar. They attribute to a source, but the source does not exist. In this attribution, the source actually exists. In ghost attribution, it doesn't exist. They may combine this and they maybe provide a quote from one article and attribute it to another, and, you know, who knows what they do. But they find it's very useful, though, if they don't remember a source. So the information may or may not be made up. So maybe they've been taking notes and they have something, but they can't remember where they found it, so they just make up one of the sources and put it there. So suppose they say, you know, again, one of the important characteristics of an effective educational leader is his or her ability to explain curricular standards. And they've got their authors. It appears to be paraphrased and cited correctly. And the problem is that it's a false author or an article. So maybe the author expects to find J.L. Pate. Well, the student makes that to be from L.J. Pate. And so it kind of looks okay. Then the next thing is the title of the journal, International Teacher Education Journal. Well, that sounds like a perfectly good journal. There's a journal titled National Teacher Education Journal. However, there is not one that's the International Teacher Education Journal. So they get stuff that's pretty close and fudge it around. And I had a student submit something from a journal, and I actually called them on it. I said, you know, I can't seem to find this journal. This was a student that I had reason to suspect anyway. And I said, could you send me a copy of that article? And then the student says, oh, you know, they must have just taken that journal article. You know, the whole journal is gone. You know, I know, you know, and yada, yada, yada. They have their good line and all of the reasons. So that's one thing to really watch, is this, you know, if it looks reasonable, and that's the key, is if they're a really good cheat, everything looks reasonable. And so it's really hard to sometimes find these things. Now this next one that I want to talk about is probably the one that's starting to scare me the most, and it's using a foreign source. And so if you go to Google Advanced Information, it tells you how to use the feature of the site, where you add cite : the name of the site you want to search. And so the Free University of Berlin is fu-berlin.de. And so suppose I wanted to search for educational leadership at that site. Okay, so this is the university, and I'm looking at that site. And so when I use Google Scholar, I get one entry, and this is a dissertation. And it's from this specific site, this Free University site. Okay, the paper's in German. I can't read German. I kind of look at it and I said, okay, what would happen? And I mean, I did this just to play with it. I used Google Translate. So I copied that page and did translate. Even Google Translate knew that the original was in German, automatically converted it to English. I then have it copied right below without doing any editing. And you know, it says the school effectiveness research deals with the effectiveness of the school apart in the school system. You know, the wording is a little bit off, so if they're kind of competent, they would go back and kind of rephrase a couple of the sentences, and they could work with that. I put it into Turnitin, has 0% match. And that just means that it's trying to match something in English to something in German, and it doesn't. Yes, this is interesting. And I think that it may become a problem when some of the other things start getting caught in, especially Turnitin. Turnitin seems to be kind of the most common one that students try to get by because it is used so many places. And then the others I don't think are quite as good, which is why more universities use Turnitin. But this is one that I'm not sure Turnitin would have any way of approaching this. I mean, they would almost have to then translate every work into every possible foreign language to do the check, and then be checking all of the foreign sources, where Turnitin tends to only check English language sources. So this is one that's kind of a scary one to me. This is where I think I'm going to start seeing more of the new cheating in my students. You know, this is the kind of stuff that you probably do. You look for awkward sentences when you're trying to catch them. Yeah, spelling errors. You know, how can they turn in something with spelling errors when you have a spell check in Microsoft Word? I'm amazed that they don't utilize the simple tools that are available. If you have the opportunity, you can perhaps do a phone call or webinar with a student and say, let me ask you about that. You know, I want to talk about that. The problem with this is that they might say you're picking on them, and depending upon your school, it may or may not be okay for you to specifically ask one student and not another. And again, it may be difficult to catch the work if it's not published in English. One friend of mine had a technique before Turnitin and before some of those, when the internet was just starting to become available, and it was a little bit difficult. And her technique was to block out every 5th or 6th word in the paper and ask the student to tell what the word was, because if they wrote it, they should know what the word was that's missing. And that would help kind of catch those students. Yeah, some of the British spelling or non-standard English spelling may be a way to catch some of these from foreign sources. But you know, I'm not. You know, those are signs. But if the student is tricky and they fix all that, boy, this is going to be one I think might be hard to catch. And then I thought about, okay, so why doesn't all of the plagiarism get reported? I mean, I'm a fanatic about trying to report it. And many faculty assume that the plagiarism detection software finds it. And if the university they have has plagiarism detection software, I teach at Walden University, and Turnitin is available. Since you don't have any at Park, maybe they assume that you're really good at plagiarism detection. And so, you know, if the faculty have a plagiarism detection software, they kind of just are complacent and say, well, if the software didn't catch it, I guess it's okay. The other issue has to do with how long it takes to submit the information. I had a student who copied a paper from a website that was for excellent doctoral dissertations in a particular field, and the student went in and she just copied huge sections of that and put it into her paper. And the process that I had to go through was very, very time consuming to have something done. If you have a mentor, your mentor may say it's not worth the effort because they've gone through that time-consuming process where you fill out the paperwork and say, it appears that you have not attributed the information correctly, and it appears that perhaps there's a problem here, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, and the writing style, if you can find the writing style, that's another thing that you look for. And one of the issues I had is that the response by the university was very minimal. They required the student to take a course on academic integrity and retake the course where the plagiarized paper was submitted. It's, you know, hard to report it when you have that much going against you. But yeah, one of the ways to report or to find it is look for a writing style that changes. If, you know, they have pretty average writing skills and a pretty low vocabulary, and then all of the sudden they are using these, you know, big words, very detailed syntax, you might be curious as to why their writing style changed. Yeah, and students try to bully their way out and say, well, you know, it was an accident, it was an honest accident, you know, you shouldn't penalize me. And then I guess I get down to, does it really matter? So I checked Ask Marilyn, which is in Parade Magazine, you know, one of those truly academic sources. And why should people not cheat? And she said, you know, well, aside from what may happen if you get caught, the best reason not to cheat is that doing so may make it appear that you are more proficient than you actually are. And then you increasingly get into deeper and deeper water and aren't able to do it. Well, you know, that's a great reason, Marilyn, but you know what? If I need a grade in this course and I need this course to graduate, frankly, who cares? You know, I'm going to do it, Marilyn. And from that same Denver Post article that I started with, the GPA of students who admitted to cheating is 3.41. The GPA of students who did not cheat is 2.85. You know, a half a point higher GPA. And 95% of cheaters don't get caught. So that bothered me, and I think it's a problem if they aren't caught, because that person who gets the degree is now your peer. If you have a bachelor's degree, they're, you know, your peer. If they get a master's, if they get a doctoral degree, you know, depending on your degree, they're your peer. When the person gets a degree, she or he is considered to be equal to others who have a same or similar degree. If they have the higher GPA, they may get a preference for a job. If they are going to cheat in school, what else will they do to cheat? And do we really want to live in that world? So those are kind of some things. What are some of your thoughts and ideas? And up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a place where you can talk if you have a microphone. It might, and I don't know if you have to do the audio wizard, but if you wanted to chat or if you just want to post, that's great too. Yeah, I agree. It lowers the value of the degree. I think that students think it's okay. You know, that's that percentage that cheat. And again, I don't think it just happens in the online world, but I think it's perhaps more prevalent in the online world because the faculty don't see the student necessarily from one semester to the next, where often if you're in a major at a regular university on ground, you don't see the same student in course after course, so you don't kind of build that relationship with them. And so the students, you know, kind of say, that's that teacher, they won't catch me in the next class. I'll reuse the paper, or I'll make minor modifications, or I'll cheat, and it won't matter. Yeah, students are brazen and bold in the online world. Well, they're sort of that way in the real world too, but in the online world, I think they don't have that connection. The Unicode web link, let me go back to that. I think I hope this isn't driving you crazy looking at this. I think they are. This is the Cyrillic code. Is this the one you were wanting? And let me find, oh, you know what? I can't, I thought I could paste from this. Hold on just a second. Let me pull it out so I can. My computer has been quite slow to load this presentation. I was using it just online. Here is one of, why didn't that, let me try copying that again. It didn't seem to copy. Okay, here is one of the links. There's one of them. And I'm trying to find my Cyrillic alphabet link, and I'm not seeing that one. I think if you just do a, oh thanks, glad that was it. If you do a search for Cyrillic alphabet, you can get all the characters and look at them also. So I'm glad that was the one you wanted. Other links you want me to copy over, or did you get? I think when they're taping this, I think they'll make it possible. There's no way for me to go quickly through this, so. I also like to kind of quickly go through some ideas on proofing your assignments. So trying to make them more difficult to plagiarize. Now, in the online world, in many cases, if you're working for something like I do for Walden or for Park, your courses are probably already developed and you're more of a support faculty than a development faculty. And it's more difficult to design your own assignment. So when you can't design your own assignment, it's a little bit harder to include some of this stuff. One of the things they list is using class discussions as a source for the paper. Now, in the course I teach for Walden, the class discussions are used to build a major assessment, so that if a student has one thing posted in the discussion board and then it's a totally different set of information and resources that they do in their major assessment. That's usually an indicator to me that they're not doing something right. You can provide some source restrictions, and that can, you can maybe indicate that they have to use one of these 3 journals or these 10 journals, and they can't use other journals, and then that would also make sure that you would be more likely to be familiar with it so that you could be checking that. You could add an oral presentation, and then the one I have used is not photocopies, but actually electronic copies of the sources. And this is some information from Colorado State University. And you know what, I'll copy that link over here right now. And they have, like I say, 15 different ideas, and those are just some of them that I think are good. This is one that if you have the option to be able to actually develop your own assignment for a course, they ask students to compare 2 things that have not been compared before or analyze something that happened within the last week. So if you're looking at something that's very current, this may be able to help you. Now, I often teach statistics and research kinds of things, so it does not line up as well to do something within the last week when I'm asking people about research statistics kind of thing, but this may work for some other courses that you're asking graduate students maybe or undergrads to start doing some higher level thinking. So I'll copy that one over for you too. Oh, I have not run across the entire class being posted online. Course Hero. Oh, I'll have to look up Course Hero and find more information about them. Yeah, you know, the cheaters are trying to come up with more ways to cheat. I'll look that up. The next idea, again, discourage trivial pursuits, questions or problems which have never been adequately answered. And then if you can be changing it, even though the Course Hero might be posting the exams and the homework, the new assignment is modified enough every course that it's harder for a student to copy. And so these were some nice ideas that I thought came from this website. And then here was another one, only assign what you have time to evaluate. And I thought this is really important. Only assign what you have time to evaluate. Students feel their effort is wasted without feedback, and if it's wasted without feedback, they don't care if they cheated because they know that you aren't going to have time to do that. Make sure you change the assignment often, and again, this is when that paper bank builds up of people doing assignments. And I really complain a lot about this at Walden, that the same course is offered for several different instructors teaching the sections, and it's offered for a couple of years before they modify it. So if you're taking the course that's been up there for a couple of years, even if you tried not to cheat, it would look like you were cheating because there's only so many ways you can address the same topic. And then they say assign a specific coupling of a text and data set or a text and movie or a theory paper and an applied paper, and say I want you to have these 2 things to work with on the assignment. And sometimes that may help, and using current events again was the idea here. And if that works well with your topic, that is a great thing to do. The takedown from the textbook publishers, you know, I have mixed thoughts with some of the textbook publishers. I sometimes am not always sure they're on our side either. So they have a lot of things, and they're, if teachers tend to use the text bank and the assignment bank and information. Sometimes faculty will put the answers up on their own website for their course. After the student turns in the assignment, they publish the exact stuff that came from the teacher's manual. So I have some concerns about that too. And then this I thought was kind of a nice one from a faculty focus article. This is a little monthly pamphlet that comes out, I don't know, it's usually about 8 or 9 pages. I guess probably about 8 pages long. And they ask students to do some analyze, reflect, relate kind of thing. And I like the one, apply what you've learned to your life or to your job, and I think that might be a good way to look at how you might change things just a little bit on an assignment or maybe even on a discussion post. I mean, I think students even cheat on copying discussion post responses, so I'm not real sure. We're always fighting, trying to stay ahead of them. So if you do plagiarize, proof your assignment, Google will give you some ideas. What have you guys tried? I'm having fun reading your responses. You showed them how they did, told students not to do it, and of course they did it, yep. Give learners resource suggestions, suggest specific papers and topics. You know, I have taught a course in the past that was for speech-language pathologists, and one of the things I said is most of them would be hired to work in a K-12 environment, and I asked them to find some articles that were more theoretical articles and tell how they would use that information if they were in a K-12 school and apply it to a student that had a particular problem. And so I was trying to use some of the current event stuff and, you know, and again, that resource-specific paper and topic kind of thing. And they tended not to be doing so much plagiarism, but the run-on quote thing is, you know, and I think one of you mentioned that earlier, the run-on quote thing can just be so annoying that you can't even read the paper sometimes because there's so many run-on quotes that you're trying to say, and so why is this here, and what does this mean? And yeah, it's hard. Yeah, the quote limit, that's a good idea, putting a quote limit on the paper. And of course they will exceed it, yes. This is really all I had for this presentation. I just wanted to kind of share some of the things that I've come across. And, you know, like I said, that foreign paper thing is something that I think I may start seeing more of now. I think that's just starting to be an idea. The compare and contrast, I like that. You know, I think, you know, here's 2 articles. On one assignment that I gave, I had students write down the papers they were going to use as their references, and nobody else in the course could use those same references. So once they had picked their papers, I had a blog and they posted their name and their articles, and so if somebody else went in, they had to make sure that nobody else had their article, and so it behooved students to be really quick, and then they'd have to change. Yeah, this is great. You know, have students ask, how much of this paper have I personally written in my own words, exhibiting my own understanding of the topic? And, you know, I have students that you can tell they don't have a clue because they've kind of got these mismatch of quotes and they don't make any sense at all. So, you know, I've seen the clause that, you know, this is my own work, and, you know, sometimes they still say that they did it. Yeah. I have students that, they just consider that just another page they're copying in. It means nothing more than anything else. And I don't know how you teach ethics. I mean, it's almost one of those where you have to get down to being honest and truthful kind of a thing. So I don't know. I wish there was a great way to handle that. But I want to say thank you. A copied ethics paper. That's a great one. Thanks for showing up for my presentation. I hope you got some great ideas, and appreciate you being here. So have a great rest of your day, and yeah, food for thought. You guys have a great day. Thanks so much. And I don't know if I know how to close this out, but I'm going to try. So thanks a lot for being here. Bye.